She was the quiet one, the faithful one, the one who stayed when others would have run. For over 40 years, Jessi Colter was the woman in the background, always composed, always loyal, always standing next to the storm called Waylon Jennings. The world knew her as the gospel heart tethered to country music's most dangerous outlaw. But at 82, she whispered something to her family that none of them saw coming. "He left something under the floorboards, and I never told a soul." That sentence didn't just break the silence, it detonated it. Because what Jessi had kept hidden wasn't just about love, heartbreak, or addiction. It was about something else. Something that could rewrite the entire legend of Waylon Jennings. And maybe, just maybe, show us the side of Jessi we were never supposed to see. For decades, she wore the smile, sang the songs, played the role of the loyal wife, the last woman standing from the outlaw era. But now, the story she buried deeper than any lyric is coming to light. And by the end of this video, the truth she held on to may just change everything you thought you knew about country music's most iconic couple. This isn't about fame. This isn't about chart-topping hits. This is about a promise Jessi made to Waylon, and the moment she finally decided to break it. Before she became the woman forever linked to country music's most volatile outlaw, Jessi Colter was Miriam Johnson, a name that didn't need rhinestones or stage lights to shine. She was born into quiet conviction, the daughter of a Pentecostal preacher, and a mother who played classical piano with the kind of grace that made even silence feel sacred. Her childhood was built on wooden pews, Sunday sermons, and a reverence for music that wasn't performed. It was prayed. It was there, in those dimly lit churches of Phoenix, that young Miriam first felt the raw electricity of melody coursing through her fingertips. By age 11, she wasn't just playing hymns, she was interpreting them, taking the rigid structures of gospel and coloring them with something unspoken. There was an edge to her sound, even then, a friction between salvation and self-expression. Music for Miriam was never just performance. It was release. It was resistance. It was the one place where a preacher's daughter could ask questions no sermon dared answer. She was quiet, yes, but never small. Those who knew her in those early years remember a girl who could stand at the altar and sing with such clarity, people stopped breathing. But behind that stillness was ambition. Not loud or reckless, but focused, exacting. She wasn't interested in fame for fame's sake. She wanted her voice to carry, beyond the church, beyond Phoenix. Beyond the safe paths laid out for a girl with perfect posture and a God-fearing father. The first time she stepped into a recording studio, she didn't flinch. While producers buzzed around her, adjusting mics and muttering about tone, Miriam just sat at the piano, closed her eyes and played like the room wasn't even there. She didn't need permission. She had purpose. And though she would later marry Duane Eddy, a man whose guitar licks could fill arenas, it was never his music that defined her. It was the way she learned to carve space for herself in the shadows, to listen, to watch, to bide her time. By the early 1970s, with a broken marriage behind her and a fire still burning in her chest, she reemerged under a name that didn't belong to a preacher's daughter or a guitarist's wife. Jessi Colter. A name with steel in it. A name that would soon be spoken in every corner of Nashville and later whispered in the corridors of country music's darkest legend. But back then, before the chaos, she was simply a woman with a voice like velvet and thunder. Still unscarred, still whole. And still unaware of the storm waiting on the horizon. When Jessi Colter met Waylon Jennings, he wasn't just a man, he was a weather system. Loud, unpredictable, magnetic. He didn't walk into rooms, he disrupted them. People didn't greet him, they braced themselves. At first there was a strange quiet between them, not awkward, but electric, like the air before lightning. She had seen men like him before, all swagger and smokescreen. But Waylon was different. He carried his pain like a badge, wore it out in the open. No pretense, no apologies, just raw, unfiltered defiance, wrapped in a voice so rough it could shred silence. He was already a rising legend, Buddy Holly's bassist turned renegade. A man who'd seen too much, lost too many, and learned early that fame was both a gift and a grave. By the time he crossed paths with Jessi, Waylon was climbing fast, but the ground beneath him had already started to crack. Jessi wasn't naive. She saw it all. The pills passed around like breath mints. The bottle never too far from reach. the eyes that darted around rooms like he was always being followed by something no one else could see. There was charisma, yes, but it was tangled in something darker, something ancient, something that whispered to him when no one else was listening. Still, she didn't turn away. Because while the world was hypnotized by the rebel, Jessi saw the boy. Fragile, bruised, terrified of being ordinary. Waylon didn't know how to sit still. He didn't know how to be safe. But Jessi knew how to hold fire without getting burned, or at least, she thought she did. Their relationship didn't explode overnight. It simmered, smoldered, then caught fire in places no one could put out. One moment, they were writing music side by side. The next, he'd vanish without warning, only to reappear days later with a 1,000-yard stare and knuckles bloodied by something he'd never talk about. They weren't a couple. They were a collision. Yet every time he fell, she picked him up. And every time she faltered, he'd pull her close and whisper promises he couldn't keep. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't safe. But it was real. And for Jessi, that mattered more than logic or self-preservation. They weren't each other's saviors. They were each other's mirrors. And what they saw wasn't always pretty, but neither looked away. In 1975, Jessi had her biggest hit, I'm Not Lisa. A song about being the stand-in for another woman, about loving someone who couldn't stop chasing ghosts. To the public, it was haunting, beautiful. To Jessi, it was a confession, because even as the world sang her name, she was losing herself. She was becoming invisible in her own story. Waylon's fame skyrocketed. Outlaw country became a brand. And Jessi? She became his wife, not the artist. People close to them began noticing the cracks that bled. Rumors started swirling, emotional abuse, maybe more. Jessi denied it all, but there's one night, 1978, Houston, Texas, that she's never spoken about. Not on stage, not in interviews, only in her journal. He looked through me like I wasn't real, like I wasn't someone he even recognized. What happened next? She never said. But she wrote one line that would come back decades later. I buried it under the floor, and I never told a soul. It was 1981. They were in a cheap motel outside Memphis. No cameras, no press, just silence. Jessi tried to get him to sleep, eat, breathe, but the fog in his mind was too thick. He turned on her. Not with fists, but with venom. Words that weren't his, words that felt borrowed from something darker. She fled that night, drove for hours. No destination, just the road and her grief. When she came back, he was gone. But on the nightstand, a small wooden box, no note, no explanation, just waiting. She didn't open it. Not that night. Not for 30 years. But when she finally did, what was inside changed everything. As Waylon spiraled deeper, Jessi became the keeper of the chaos. She tracked his disappearances, his aliases, the motels, the overdoses that were quietly called exhaustion. She kept it all in a hidden notebook. Every lie, every recovery, every collapse. And then came the tape. A cassette labeled only Tombstone. Waylon's voice, crying, rambling, talking about a choice he made in 1974. He said it wasn't murder, but it was something close. Jessi kept the tape in a safe, alongside the box, and a photo of Waylon standing in front of a desert church with a man she didn't recognize. Scrawled on the back, EW, don't forget what we did. She didn't tell her son. She didn't call the police. She just carried it. Years later, a baby grand arrived. No card, no message, just a carving under the lid, to the one who stayed. She never learned who sent it, but she started playing again, and with each note, the memories returned. Tucson. A night, a letter she was forced to burn, and the thing they buried together before the sun came up. Whispers started spreading. A song Waylon wrote in secret. A fifth verse, never released, never logged. The lyrics? A preacher's lie, a grave with no name, a woman who knew too much. Only one person had the tape, Jessi. One engineer who heard it said it left him cold for weeks. Then in 2012, Jessi confirmed it, quietly, indirectly. He recorded many things he never wanted the world to hear. In 2022, she appeared unannounced at a small Nashville tribute. Halfway through the night, she walked onto the stage, sat alone at the piano, played Storms Never Last. But halfway through, she changed the words. You promised the preacher we'd never go back, but I still hear the shovel. The earth going black. Gasps, silence, no one moved. She finished the song and vanished out the back door. Months later, under her real name Miriam Johnson, Jessi released an album online. No label, no fanfare, just 10 songs. one of them titled simply Tucson. One line sent shivers down spines. He said the bottle was empty, but the deed was done. So we buried the truth before the morning sun. Within days, the album disappeared, scrubbed from servers, but the truth was out. And in Tucson, a church quietly began renovations. Locals reported government vans. Some say something was found in the basement. We may never know. In her final interview, sunlight dancing through the trees, Jessi was asked, "Do you have regrets?" She paused, looked away. "I wish we had been more honest, with each other, with ourselves. But Waylon, he was a haunted man, and some ghosts you can't bury with songs." And with that, she ended the story. Not with a confession, not with a reveal, but with a whisper. Because sometimes, the truth isn't shouted, it's sung, softly, by the last voice left who remembers. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something you can't quite name, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We've got more untold stories, music mysteries, and buried truths waiting to be uncovered. Until next time, keep listening. Sometimes, the quietest voices have the loudest truths.